Maureen is our first reader tonight. Her first book of poetry, Rough Skin, won the League of Canadian Poets Gerald Lampert Award for her best first book of poetry by a Canadian. Her 2016 collection, The Poison Color, was shortlisted in 2016 for both the Pat Lowther and Raymond Suster Awards. Maureen's fifth book of poetry, Sotto Voce, comes out from Brick Books in fall 2019. It's out. Her poetry has been included in over 25 anthologies, including twice in Best Canadian Poems in English and in Best of the Best Canadian Poetry 2017. Maureen is the poetry editor for Our Times magazine, wherein she encourages submissions that reflect themes about workers' lives, rights, insights, and social justice.
I'm going to start with the title poem, Sotto Voce. That is probably most of you know this, but it's an opera or theater term that instructs the singer or the actor to speak deliberately, slowly, sort of step out of his or her role and explain to the audience the shenanigans or the truth of what's going on behind. So the book sort of plays with issues of speaking loudly and speaking quietly. So this poem, Sado Voce, incorporates some quotes from the poet Jack Spicer, and also I wrote it after seeing with my partner a wonderful opera called The Whisper Opera by David Lang, where the singers whispered their singing all night. It was an extraordinary feat. Okay, Sotto Voce. When you whisper everything, when even your saxophone whispers its notes, when you just graze your fingertips across the drum skin for a drumly quietness, or the words on your sheet lower their volume to minimal, when you forswear aloud for the everyday language of small rivers, today the dawn is open, free-flowing and black, not closed and frozen white. When the scratchy hushes under the thickening ice become fainter and fainter, when you whisper everything, vows and regrets, sweet nothings and morsels of shame, or just the abundant mundanities of your life, listeners strain to catch your watery drift. They follow your eyes. Your breath is a hand resting on a baby's naked chest. After the breath stops, Spicer says the words, listen. At the end of the evening's whispering, an old neighbor said all she could hear was the eulogy for my mother from 30 years ago. You were always hearing your own, all the way down past the future, louder and more audible than murmurs that go swimming past you as if they were blue fish. And the next poem I'll read is called Sonnenizio on the Unseen. And a sonnenizio is a form that the US poet Kim Addonizio invented. And so it's a sonnet, it's 14 lines, but what you have to do, there are 4 things you have to do to fulfill the rigor of this form, is steal a line from another poet to start the poem, and then choose one word from that line that is repeated in each of the subsequent 13 lines. And finally, this is more traditional, the last 2 lines should be a rhyming couplet. So you'll see I cheated, or you'll hear that I cheated a little bit with the repetition of the word see. And the line I stole is from Bernadette Mayer's poem, Incandescent Ore Poems Sonnet. So, Sonnenizio on the Unseen. Even before I saw the chambered nautilus, and that was only in the vast and blinking online sea, or perhaps I did see it in one of Neruda's houses, because all his homes draw marvel seekers. Even before that, I heard the armored cicada sawing during a Chinese summer exactly how they saw back home, and felt the gaze of a serious young seaman inking a scrimshaw boat onto a Pleistocene tusk. Before not seeing gilt altars and gilded children, or the massacre of West Coast walruses and seals, I said the unseen is what will undo us, not so much what is out of sight, but what we refuse to see. It will seed the future into our bodies, raise walls and beams and seal us from each other with hardened pearly seams. And the next poem is called, thank you, the next poem is called Bolt of Fabric. It could be Chinese silk or rough Irish linen, slub and flecks of applause, tertiary good wishes woven in, possibly woven on the looms of the gods and goddesses who remove chaff from our fiber and let us begin our beginnings. Yellow strips torn from my dead uncle's unpaid parking tickets, what he got away with, plaited into thick padded matting or braided with my mother's prayed and unprayed novena cards, her devotion sincere nonetheless, made into longings and linings and interlinings. You could gather water lily and alder roots, soften them with your teeth, weave them into a shawl 8 hours a day. You could cut 3-meter lengths at your first job. You could wrap your lifetime in it, or at least wear it for the 3 simple ceremonies. And this poem is called Dolorosa. It's sort of an Easter poem, a spring poem, and the Latin Stabat Mater Dolorosa, you probably are familiar, maybe familiar with, means stood the mother in her sorrow. Dolorosa. For some, Holy Week, the week of processions and penitence, ends with Forsythia and the blue spill of Scylla all down this winter-battered city hill. For others, bombardment and catastrophe. Stabat Mater at the foot of the cross, Stabat Mater Dolorosa, the second deadliest weapon in the arsenal, pitched right up close to the deadliest, stood the woman with her sorrow at the foot of the mother bomb. We roast the lamb and forget the past, our right to live a blitz-free life. Who gathers the hungry children, boils a single egg for a family of 8? Who binds their wounds and lifelong distress? Who speaks with a stammer and never learns to read? Whose orange life jacket is cast on the rocks by storm at midnight? After sorrow comes happiness, wrote Ho Chi Minh. What could be more natural? We are in a remembering frame of mind, but it does no good. There are some who think of war with no despair, who scrawl red words on every wall. We want a map out of here. We have only the 6-petaled blue flower. And then I'll read a gentler poem, I think. This one is called Pebble. The pebble she takes into her mouth is a pill for the pain settling in. Dime-sized, a single white line across its gray flatness on her tongue. It clicks against her teeth. The headache is returning like her mother's interminable phone calls. Speak to the mother, she tells herself. Smooth her hair, massage her scalp, scratch her back, oil her heels and soles. Talk her back to her young motherhood when she bought a French serge suit, pencil skirt, fitted flared jacket, slash pocket, their seams stitched clothes. A mother who never took scissors to the threads, never allowed herself the pleasure of putting her hands in her pockets. That would ruin the line. Damselfly, she thinks, come stitch my mind shut so the headache won't return. Daisy, glimmer the ache away. Black-winged cormorant, she calls, soar over the river's suspension bridge and past the creosote-scented railway ties. Bring me your recipe for calm in a clamshell. In narrowing swoops, bind a birch white bandage around my head. And now I thought I'd read a few newer poems that have, you know, when you publish a book, they're poems that have been with you for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And it's nice sometimes to turn to the new poems. This one is sort of on the theme of mother, and I don't get to do this usually in readings, but I have a little prop that I could show you. Is that clear? You can see that? Great. So this poem is called Number 5. Little square bottle, the same age as me. Little square label, pencil-thin brown line of dried perfume within. Just lift the cut glass stopper, release my mother's lost fragrance. In the 50s, no one cared about Coco's Nazi lovers. The war over. Wealth was what people wanted, or at least signs of it. Something elegant on the bedroom dresser, something small that said Paris, glamour, a scent that would last for decades. Thanks. This poem is after Rilke's first elegy, where he talks about all the things that are your charge, your mission. So this is called Desires. To make a visible dent of fairness in your institutions, to chop and season the kale, to befriend those you admire, those who tickle or challenge you, shore up those who fall deep into despond, to water the tomato plants and nicotiana. All this your charge, your mission, to attend to oil spills, minimum wages, your dying magnolia tree. Direct rage and despair into action, to love instantly and fully, retain the names of wildflowers, birds, streets, distant relatives, to trace with your finger the stitches the stars make across the night sky. Hold your father's unconscious hand as his grip loosens. Make strange the regular order of words, to find elegance in their turmoil, to uncage the caged and unspell the tyrants, to desire your desires, all this. This poem is called, thank you, this poem is called The Dazzle Time, and it draws a little bit on the work of the artist David Milne, a Canadian artist who spent time in France during World War II, but was mostly kind of a landscape artist, although he did cityscapes too. The Dazzle Time. The skies are emptying of airplanes, maybe even drones, but my mind is full, intentions that take off but never land. They hover mid-air at the gray horizon, shadowing the late afternoon sun. What strange internalized days we are enduring, some of us welcoming them, some of us chasing against their blankness. David Milne, married twice, but a solitary man, painted city streets, lakes, and leafy trees pressed fan-shaped flat against the sky. A still life with a cobalt blue medicine bottle, often a woman sewing or reading in a wicker chair, whatever's in front of me. Developed the practice of leaving a blank space somewhere in the canvas, called it the dazzle area. One unpainted building, say, in a crowded cityscape, to snatch and release your interest, engage it elsewhere on the canvas. Blank, before it meant white, it meant to shine, to flash, to burn. Is this the blank spot in our lives? Can we glean in isolation, polish our inner lives, brighten our songs and odes, bleach our regrets? Oh, but now it's time for more window gazing. The number of kids in the tiny park behind our house, 0. And then I'm going to go back to the book to read one poem, and then I'll go back and read one more new poem. And so this is a little bit of a love poem, kind of. It's called 693 Cemetery Road, and that's sort of the address of a place that my partner and I stayed in the North Shore of Nova Scotia. 693 Cemetery Road. We lived a week in the slope-ceilinged, head-hitting house, banged our knees against the banister, nailed pillows to the rafters, abandoned our books in the sand, spilled every kind of tea, crushed blueberries to mask our bruises. Sunrise pierced our eyes awake. The sky filled and emptied, fog surrounded the bed, curtained our lovemaking. Once a day, we briefly tuned into drought across the land, strife on the convention floor. We cooked outdoors, scallops, turnips, rhubarb pie, and folded $10 bills into herons and pelicans. We found companions. A shabby-winged eagle perched on a post presided over our seaside holiday. Quick visits from a hare family. One evening, a stillness with ears stopped and moved and stopped through dusk's thick fog. 9 deer in the tall grasses staring at us. Behind the house, a cemetery. Beyond, the world's calmest ocean. Villagers had pulled tombstones out from the dense alder, bayberry, and rugosa, scrubbed till the old Swiss-German names appeared, rearranged the stones in a harmonious new order that renamed those lying below. Children and women who died young, men who lived long, tidying the dead. We walked miles of beaches daily, burned the bashed tops of our heads. Tides pulled at our ankles, soaked our thoughts. The dead lent us their sleep each night, and when we woke, we thanked them. And thanks. The last poem I'll read is a sort of newish one, and it's after Harriet Mullen's poem Jingle Jangle in her collection called Sleeping with the Dictionary. So it's called Everything's Hunky-Dory. Luckily, I have a lot of highbrow knickknacks, a hurdy-gurdy and a ship-shaped buzzsaw, quicksilver shoe shine and flim-flam pajamas, all kind of loosey-goosey. Tick-tocks for the stock pot, a cracker jack and flip-flops that go clip-clop if you jazz up the soles with some clunky razzmatazz doodads. Streams and streams of sticky ticker tape picked up off the wet streetscape after a rainy parade to celebrate the wicked war's end, when the dream team was elected, but ding dong, now they're dead. A bright, whirly jukebox that plays a lot of artsy-fartsy clap-trap, but one treasure is the old cassette of Brendan Behan singing Jingle Jangle Goes the Old Triangle, his party piece and mine. A chock-a-block collection that just looks higgledy-piggledy but melts the hearts of the hoity-toity and tickles the toes of the whippersnappers and the pipsqueaks. What good fortune. Thanks so much, everyone.
This is really such a small question compared to the scope of what we've just heard. And I adored Dolorosa. I would love to hear it a second time somewhere. Anyway, or read it. Is there a dream team in your mind? Is there an actual dream team?
No.
Okay.
I mean, there is a dream team, you know, a slate of perfect candidates who would be feminist and socialist and who would undo the tyranny that is happening in so many lands across the world. So it's kind of a fantasy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was reading some interviews you had, and you said it was important to know when to speak loudly and when to whisper. And I'm just interested in when you try and speak loudly in a poem and when you try and whisper in a poem, and how do you decide how to do that?
Sometimes, you know, I have a sort of stream of political poems, and sometimes they are most effective when they're not said directly and they're said softly, but not always. Sometimes if you speak directly, they have more power. And I think that's true of every kind of poem, a love poem or a nature poem. There's something, you just have to know when to shout and when to whisper.